conservatory too hot, too cold or too bright? If so, we can probably help you. My name's Colin Staplehurst and I'd like to introduce you to the world of clip-in conservatory blinds. What I'm going to do is talk about roof blinds and then move on to side blinds. So if we start off with a typical roof blind, here's one. It's triangular, as you can see. All side blinds are rectangular, by the way, so you can tell the difference quite easily. This is made up of an extruded aluminium frame, which is very strong. Reinforced cornice, again using bent strips of aluminium, and the pleated blind itself. You can only have pleated blinds in perfect fit clip-in blinds in the roof. We'll talk about side blinds later on where you've got more choice. Now here's the critical bit, the clips. On this blind I've actually shown two clips which I'm supporting the blind by now. They clip into the roof between the white UPVC and the glass itself. If you look up in your roof, your conservatory roof, you will see between the white UPVC and the glass a thin black line. Well, actually that black line is a rubber membrane, and that's where the clips clip into. The clips are very easy to detach. You normally use a screwdriver, but I'm going to actually use my thumb now. And what you've got is an L-shaped clip. Basically, the clip, the plain part of the clip, pushes between the UPVC and the glass into that rubber membrane. And once you've done that, you've got these ratchet tongues hanging down and protruding from the window. Okay, so what you then do is you've got a two-part clip on the roof blinds. You've got a plastic retainer here, which is clipped into position on the blind itself. And then once that's clipped into position, it's located, the blind is located on the clips that are now protruding from the roof, and the blind is pushed home. You can hear the ratchet pushing it right until the blind's pushed right up to meet the face of the window or within the buttresses on the Ned Gordian window. Okay, there are two types of clips. One is recessed fit, one is face fit. We won't worry about the details of that yet, but basically a blind like this will have 4 clips on it. And you can see once those clips are in position, you can virtually hang the weight of a man on that. I mean, they're not going to come out. That's the point I'm making. Okay, now let's move on to other points about the clips. Basically, a typical blind will have between 3 and 7 clips on it, depending on its configuration. So it's not going to go anywhere. But what that does entail is that obviously when you have clip-in blinds installed, that they've got to be measured extremely accurately to get everything in the right position. And that is where the skill comes in. Okay, let's move on to look at other aspects of the blind. As I said, you can only get pleated blinds in roof blinds, in perfect fit clip-in roof blinds that is. And here's a typical pleat. This is plain fabric, quite a popular one. The important thing about this pleated fabric is that it's a coated fabric. And what I mean by that, I'm not sure if you can see on the camera, but basically it's got a reflective silver coating. And that silver coating is what does all the work. It keeps the heat out in summer, the cold in winter, and the blind itself reduces the glare. If you're offered a pleated fabric without that silver coating, it probably won't do what you want it to do, and you're probably wasting your money, so do be aware of that. Right, another very important point on the pleats themselves, and this more applicable to side blinds, is this tape. Now it doesn't look very significant, but is very important in keeping the pleats from dropping out. And what I mean by that is that when the pleats are in that position for years on end, gravity can take effect, and generally the pleats at the bottom often remain in the correct angle, but the ones at the top just flatten out. You may well have seen this on cheap side blinds in pleated fabrics, where they haven't got this tape. Now this tape is called equipleat or unipleat, and it depends which manufacturer you get the pleated fabric from that determines whether it's one of those two. Now what that does is ensure that the pleats remain at equidistance to each other for years and years and years. If you're sold a blind, particularly a side blind, in pleated format, without that, forget it. Because in a few years you'll very much regret it, because your blinds will have flattened out and look pretty horrible. Okay, other than that, that's a traditional pleated blinds in there. As I said, there's not much tension on these wires, mainly because the frame is supporting this blind. It also supports the edge of the blind, which is important in itself. The reason it's important is because with traditional blinds that don't clip into a conservatory roof, if you can see the edge of the pleat, that means that air can circulate around the edge of the pleat. What we do with this, because you can't see the edges, we're actually trapping a layer of air next to the glass. So thermally, it's a much better blind than a traditional pleated blind. Okay, what else have we got here? Well, if you've got a high blind, obviously you may not be able to reach that by hand, and that's where the adjustment comes in here. And basically you get an extension pole which just clips on there. Once it's clipped on, it will support its own weight. You can actually let go of it, and then you adjust it wherever you want to and leave it there. The important thing about the adjustment is because as there's hardly any tension on these wires due to it being a clip-in blind, there's not a great deal of effort required to adjust them. With traditional blinds, what they're doing, they're putting a lot of tension on these wires to make sure that the blind is held up to the roof. And basically, the more tension they put on the wires, the less sagging you get in the blind. So what you're doing when you get traditional blinds installed, you're putting a lot of tension into your conservatory roof to hold them up. Particularly on long blinds, you need a lot of tension to hold those straight. And of course, they're drilling holes to do that. We don't drill holes, we don't need to. Okay, so you've got a lot of tension on those traditional blinds, and that makes the function of drawing the blinds a lot harder. So do bear that in mind, particularly if you've got elderly relatives thinking of buying these and your blinds are say 3 or 4 feet above head level. That'll mean that their job will be a lot harder. Okay, what else is there to say? Well, there's not a lot more to them, but please note the robustness of this frame. Once that's clipped in, that's not going anywhere. Okay, so by the way, this section here is purely to make it fit exactly into the shape of the conservatory roof. Okay, so that's a roof blind. What I'd like to do now is just move on to the side blinds. And what we'll start off with is a pleated blind. We just had a look at them. Here's another pleated blind, probably the same fabric by the look of it. Again, notice the unipleat or equipleat on the back of the blind. That stops the pleats dropping out. The sturdiness of the frame, again, is not as sturdy as the roof blinds. And the reason for that is that it doesn't need to be. The window actually supports these in the vertical position, and all you need is a few clips, well, a minimum of 4 really, or 2 on the small opening windows at the top of the conservatory. It's a few clips to hold them into the window. These are very simple clips. They're not as strong as the roof blinds because they don't need to be, and simply they just push into the frame. So again, you've got the tongue of the clip which is pushed into the rubber in the window, and then the frame is pushed into that clip. So you've got 4 clips which are holding it. They're not very strong clips, although they're steel, they click home. They're also available in white or brown, by the way. So if you've got a brown conservatory, that's not a problem. We'll speak about that in a minute, actually, because that can get complicated. Basically, if you've got a white or brown conservatory, you can get roof blinds in white or brown. Now, if you've got a golden oak conservatory, which is slightly lighter brown than the standard, you can only get side blinds in golden oak colour, and it's not painted on the frame of the golden oak blinds. Basically, it's a plastic wrap which is golden oak, and it can cost you more if you go to other manufacturers. So do beware of that, because they'll pump the price up. But obviously, if you've got a golden oak conservatory and you want roof blinds, you either have white or the dark brown. Luvalite, the manufacturer, don't actually make golden oak frames for roof blinds. Do be aware of that. Other than that, straightforward blind, operates by hand, no big deal really. Same fabrics are available in the side or the roof blinds for pleated blinds, and although the side blinds aren't so critical in keeping the heat out, side blinds are really for privacy. They're not significant in keeping the hot and the cold out, anywhere near as significant as roof blinds. So do be aware of that. If you've got a heat problem, it's a roof you want done. If you've got a privacy problem, it's probably the sides you want done. So do be aware of that. So what else can you get in side blinds? Well, because they're all rectangular, you've got more choice. We make more options available to you. Let's have a look at another one. Okay, this is it's Venetian blind. It's quite a big one actually. Again, it's operated by hand for the draw up and down, and for the tilt, you have a tilt rod. Now, let me say, this is the only blind in perfect fit clipping variety that has any hanging control. Now, as you're probably aware, child safety is a big deal now, and with Venetians and children getting entangled within the cords, they've actually taken the cords off the drawer and built tension into the blind so you can just adjust it by hand. Okay. However, it still leaves the hanging control for the tilt, but you can't get entangled in a straightforward rod. Okay, so if you're going for Venetian blind options, which are often the same, no more expensive than the pleated blind options, do beware that you will have a hanging control. Now, obviously, these can be trimmed to the length you want, but do be aware of that. Other than that, they're fairly straightforward. They move with the window, etc., etc. Okay, the frame is identical, whether it's Venetian, pleated, or roller blind. So, mentioning roller blind, let's move on to roller blinds. Here's a roller blind. Nice little units. Hadn't been out long. They've been having teething problems over the last year or so with the configuration of roller blinds, but now Luvalite have really got it sorted. And what you've got here is a tensioned roller blind, so you can simply lock it where you want. The frame is the same, as I say, the clips are the same. The only difference is that you've got to have this bulbous section at the top to contain the roller blind itself. Now, there is one thing that you should be aware of with roller blinds, and that is, because they're a tension blind and you've got a tension spring in the top there, the minimum width you can have made is about 300mm, about a foot. So if you've got windows in your conservatory that are less than a foot, unfortunately you can't have roller blinds. You've got to go for the Venetians, or you've got to go for the pleated blinds. Lovely product actually. A lot of variety in roller blind fabrics as well, so if you want to add something to your conservatory, you can certainly do it that way. Unfortunately, due to the way roller blinds are made with the tensioned roller, they are more expensive than the Venetians and the pleated, so do be aware of that. You're probably thinking, well, he's shown me a couple of big ones. What about those small windows at the top of the conservatory? Not a problem. They make these a lot smaller. Typically, you'd have a window of that depth that would just clip, the frame would just clip into the window and move when you open the window. That's the important thing, it'll move with the window. Great thing is, it gives you total versatility. If you've got 20 windows in the sides of your conservatory and you want to draw one, and leave the other 19 open or whatever, you can do that. It's total versatility. Okay, one other thing to be aware of is that the frames have got depth to them. There's a depth between the face of the window and the front of the frame of about 6 mil. Now, why is that important? Well, the only reason it's important is because on those opening windows at the top, often where you go to open the window, the distance between the opener and the window frame can be less than 6 mil. So we can get over that, and simply what we do, we remove the handle and we put a spacer behind it, typically 2 or 3 mil thick, and that gives you the clearance on the frame. Otherwise you scratch the frame at the bottom, or you wouldn't be able to operate your opening window. Okay, so that's a brief introduction to Conservatory clip-in blinds for the roof and the sides. And of course we keep talking about conservatories. Basically you can have these on any window in the house. So if you look at the side blinds and thinking, I could do with one of those Venetian clip-in blinds in my bathroom, yes, you can do that. That's not an issue. Okay, so thank you for your time. If you've got any questions, go to our Q&A section. Loads of answers in there. A lot of details also in the news section about how the clips work, etc. But if you can't get your answers there, do have a look at our other videos on YouTube or give me a call. Thank you.